buying an incredible, stunning Root-over-Rock Bonsai? Well, that's easy. But creating one that actually looks believable, that is much harder. And today I will explain the 3 mistakes I see most often and tell you exactly how to avoid them. Hiya, it's Xavier and welcome to my bonsai retreat and welcome to episode 2 of Bonsai Essentials, a series in which I take one bonsai principle or technique, explain it so that both you and your bonsai can hopefully get better. So in this episode we're going to dive into Root-over-Rock or Root-on-Rock, whatever you call it, and I'm going to show you and explain in detail the 3 most common mistakes I see in the execution of this style. But before we go on and explore these 3 big mistakes, do you know what? Let's just enjoy these 2 incredible Chinese elm Root-over-Rock bonsai imported in 2020 and purchased as a result of a request from my late wife Zita. Absolutely magnificent trees. Now let me say straight away, there is absolutely nothing wrong with buying your own finished tree, because although you haven't developed it, there is still a load to learn about how to care for it, how to make sure that the roots don't dry out, indeed how to repot it, and that's something we will actually talk about in future episodes. And if you want to know more about this this beautiful Mame Juniper Itoigawa on rock that I worked on with Yella of Growing Bonsai, then actually that's a cracking video for you to watch. But later, we've got more to talk about, haven't we? But for me, there's no greater buzz than creating your own bonsai style, like this Chinese elm Root-over-Rock. And for that, you need a whole plethora of different skills and techniques. But you know what's most encouraging? This was started in 2014. I had absolutely no experience of even how to start a Root-over-Rock. And look at it, 14 years later, it was started as a little cutting of one of my parent plants. And if anything should encourage a beginner how easy it really is to do, this should. So come on, let's find out what that first mistake is. The biggest mistake I find people make. And that is simply the roots unattached or gripping that rock. Something which is absolutely critical to maintain that illusion of age and the credibility of the composition. Now with this Trident Maple, which was a cutting 5 or 6 years ago, I actually revealed this 2 years ago and discovered that this part here hadn't actually gripped the rock around here. It was supposed to sit and nestle in this area here. The reason why I'll come to in a minute, but it got replanted, uncovered, and what I've actually done is down here I've really bound the roots in tight. So although I haven't got this part around, lower down, it's moving with the rock. That means I've managed to save this one. Equally, the same applies to this Tiger Bark Ficus, which again, the same time, 5 years ago, I put it onto this rock, and to my horror, when I revealed it 2 to 3 years ago, it wasn't hanging on at all, and I had 2 choices: to forget the whole project or to try again. Now, if you've invested already 2 years of your bonsai time into something like this, and the only reason it failed, well, we'll get to that in a minute, is because of something you've done wrong, it stands to reason. Best thing to do, try again, adapt, modify, and learn from your lessons, and that's what I did here. And in this case, you'll see that although I've got these roots coming down the side here, and they're gripping quite tightly, the securing factor is coming from this big fat root, which is actually inside a fissure in this Japanese slate rock. This is what's gripping and holding on to create that lovely firm illusion of a root over rock. But the solution to avoiding this mistake is relatively simple. Bind these thin roots, and remember, for 90% of the cases, they're going to be young saplings or indeed cuttings. Very, very delicate, but easily manipulated roots, which you can definitely feed into fissures and cracks. Bind it really, really tightly. Don't just drape it over, pile the soil on there and hope that that will work. Because what actually happens if you do that, and I know from experience, is that the roots just lift away from the rock, or soil gets in under the roots and it never ever grips. That's certainly the problem that happened with the tiger bark ficus. So both these trident maples have had cling film firmly wrapped around them very tightly, and then left for at least 2 years. All I do then is let the trunks grow, because with trunks growing you get loads and loads of green foliage. That allows lots of photosynthesis, which feeds in and gives you nice, strong, thickening roots. And you definitely need thickening roots for Root-over-Rock to be a success. And in fact, in my next video, I'm going to be revealing or redoing with this trident maple that's been on this rock now and buried initially up to here. It's 2 years later. I'm ready to take it even further down. So it's so important that those roots grip the rock. And how does this actually work? Well, look, you can use a number of materials. Again, look in the playlist, my Root-over-Rock playlist. I've got quite a number of videos showing how these were actually put together, and it'd be ideal for those of you who are just following into starting this great style of bonsai. But I've used a number of ways of binding the rock. I've used raffia because it's biodegradable. However, I found that it was almost too biodegradable to keep some of those roots tight in. I then went to tin foil, aluminum, wrapped that round. I've used string, and indeed I've used wire. But I finally ended up using grafting tape because it's easy to use, it sticks to itself, and I can wrap it really, really tightly, very easily when you've only got one person. And indeed, these and the other two you've just seen have been using grafting tape. And again, I'll say again and again, then leave it minimum for 2 years before you start to have a look and reveal. And if you reveal and it's not clinging on, redo and wait another 2 years. But it's not only fissured rocks that traditionally we would use. There are also other times. Do you know what? This larch, it's been growing for about 9 or 10 years, and this lovely big bit of slate, don't know, it must have fallen out of the sky. Actually, that'll come to mistake 3. I jammed it down, all the way down. It goes all the way down to about here. It actually goes right through the bottom. Just mucking about. In fact, I did it with a hornbeam, done it with an oak, and to varying degrees of success. Never occurred to me, but that is absolutely jammed in. Again, all that's happened is the roots have gripped the base of it, and now the tree is firmly attached. And you know, if you want to know a test on whether or not your Root-over-Rock is working, either hold the rock or indeed the tree. But I will warn you, do make sure it's been like this for a good few years. There's also another example of how Root-over-Rock can work, and I've seen many people try it where they just drape the roots around quite a large rock, like in fact I've done with this English oak. There's no fissures or anything in this. I've literally found an oak. It's got 3 roots either side. This probably applies to trees that are a little bit older, so you've got less flexibility in the roots. Principle remains the same, but I literally levered it apart, whacked it on this great big rock about 3 years ago, and then I bound the base of the roots under the rock, again wrapping it very, very tightly, and have left it. Now, there is still a little bit of movement in it. This is a much slower process, and I reckon I'm going to need lots and lots of foliage to give me lots and lots of energy in the roots, and I'm going to have to leave it on this rock probably for up to 5 years, I reckon, before I'll be confident that I can actually grip the rock or the tree and know that it will hold. So where you have done this process of draping or cascading roots down over the side, you still need to bind them, otherwise the roots will just lift away. But you definitely probably have to double the time it takes before you can start exploring and perhaps lifting the rock a little bit. In fact, that reminds me of a project that I started as a result of something I saw at Herons. And what I've done is I've taken an existing 25-year-old larch, spread the roots out over a great big rock, and that was 18 months ago, and I'm just waiting for those old roots to continue to grow, feed and grip the rock. I'd imagine that's going to be on that rock and covered up for at least another year to 18 months before I feel confident enough to have a look. Now, there is actually one other way that the root-over-rock process can work, and that situation arises where you've got really porous rocks, limestone, sandstone. Probably sandstone's a bit too porous, but certainly here with this limestone on this Welsh rock. You've seen this Labrador Larch Mountain, there's a good few videos about this one, but the trees have literally, those roots have started to dive into the porous rock, and that's what's actually keeping these ones on there. So, should we test this and see whether or not it truly is an attached root over rock? I just said you should be able to flip it upside down without all the soil coming out, and as you can see, that is firmly attached. Brilliant, must have worked. A mistake two, well, it's truly frustrating when it happens. You spend a couple of years, 3 years maybe, getting that rock and roots firmly attached. You're really proud when you reveal it, and then you think, oh, I better start looking at the trunk. Well, by then it's often too late. And although it's not so extreme in this case, I've got a trident maple here firmly attached to the rock, really secure. Up here I've got loads and loads of foliage, but if we follow the line, I've got to go 4/5 of the way up the trunk before I get anything at all. Not really that bendy, so wire is probably not an easy option. And also, because it's on a rock, securing the wire can be a problem. In this instance, I spent more time concentrating on the actual securing to the rock and absolutely no time thinking, I'm here to develop a bonsai. I didn't even think about developing the tree. This is the common mistake I see a lot of people make when they proudly display their roots gripping over a beautiful rock. In fact, there's another example which shows it even better. And that's this Chinese elm over a very, very long rock. Beautiful tortured roots going all the way, wrapped around, holding this tree firmly onto this rock. In fact, you saw me put this into the pot early this year, back in February, March time. But I think you can all see the problem. We have achieved the root over rock, but look at this. Go all the way up this trunk. No taper. Luckily, we've got a branch here. That may lead to a solution, which you'll probably see in the next video when I try and resolve some of these issues. We go all the way up here before we've got foliage right up at the top. Does this look realistic? Actually, we'll leave that for mistake number 3. So this needs to be resolved. And the reason? I didn't get the balance right between looking after the root production to grip the rock and actually trying to identify my primary structure. You really do have to, very early on, once it's on the rock and probably within the first year, identify shoots that are coming out low down and don't remove them. Leave them there. You can still grow a long sacrifice if you don't want it to be that tall, but you still need to have those shoots lower down, especially if you have a tree that is not like a Chinese elm or a trident maple and doesn't produce loads of shoots when you cut it back hard. So it can definitely be a bit of a balancing act. I do love this Chinese elm again, put over a rock. They had 2 big Y roots. I've just got this wire, I've had it on there for about a year just to hold the rock into the pot. There was no other way of securing it. Probably take that off now. But for me, if I've got a basic timeline, year 1 is really getting those roots tightly packed, leaving the tree, let everything grow, make sure to keep a few shoots lower down. Then year 2 to 3, making sure you've identified and got some primary structure branches which are going to make sense with the tree on the rock. Little branches here. I can always cut back stuff that's higher up. Then year 3 or maybe 4, you're going to start revealing the rock, and that's going to happen with this, as I said in the next video. If you want to make sure you see how I deal with these root over rocks, then you know what you need to do. It helps me, it helps the channel, And it doesn't cost you anything. Just hit subscribe. Make sure you hit bell notifications, because otherwise YouTube won't send it to you. They think they know better than you what you want to watch. Enough of that moan. So yeah, so that year 3 to 4, you're revealing more of it. And then year 4, well, it's all about the tree. You've got your little primary branches. Start developing. Ignore the rock. Now you're trying to grow your bonsai. And that also needs to be believable. Which probably takes us on to mistake number 3. And if you haven't guessed it, well, here it is. In fact, this mistake number 3, can really hurt, especially if you're 5 years down the line. And by now you're all shouting out to me, it's not believable. Does it happen in nature? How could a tree have developed and grown in this little rock? Could it possibly have grown here? It's impossible. So we're trying to create an illusion or representation of something that happens in nature. If you get that wrong, then sometimes it doesn't matter how much great work you've done, you probably haven't created a bonsai that people are going to appreciate. Unless, of course, you're going for that quirky sort of artistic version, in which case that's equally fine. Ultimately, it's all about perspective. Your perspective matters most. I mean, you need to consider things like the rock angle, the tree angle, how the roots are actually wrapping around. Does that, I mean, in this instance, does that even make sense on a vertical rock? How did that actually happen? Not impossible. I'll explain why in a minute. You know, you've got to consider things like, you know, could the seed realistically have grown in this spot? Are there the conditions and the humidity around to make this plausible? Certainly with a tiger bark ficus like this, where you've got humid forests, you're going to have all the right conditions for this to happen naturally in nature. You know, you need to be considering things like scale, like the size of the rock to the roots and the tree. Try and factor in movement that complements the rock. And in this case, actually, when you look at it, it actually looks like it's sitting on a bench. What probably needs to happen, and what you'll see happen in the next video, is me taking it out of here, changing the potting angle radically to give it a more credible design, and also show off the rock and the roots a lot more. I say again, it is very much a matter of perspective, and it's got to please you in the end. And even with this one, asking yourself that question, how could that possibly have taken place? Yes, it's a snapshot probably of a bigger rocky range, but you need the viewer to be able to understand what it is you're trying to achieve. And I can easily see this happening. Imagine the seeds fall at the top. Actually, you've got a soil that's up here. Erosion, as we know, is happening a lot more. The soil levels drop further and further down. Rain is washing those roots dry. Now the ground level's here, and you've got these imposing trees on these stalactite rocks. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. The problem I've got is I've got to reduce the height of this to make it a much more believable tree. Or indeed bring some branches down. Again, you might see what I do to this next week. I mean, even this one, you might ask yourself, how on earth did that happen? And I can imagine this in an area that's hit with a lot of water, a lot of erosion, swampy maybe, and you just slowly get the levels dropping and dropping until you've got all these roots tortured and running. Now again, I'll say to you, it is very, very subjective, and some Root-over-Rocks and some Root-over-Rocks you could plainly say that would never ever happen in nature. But you know what, I challenge you to take a walk sometimes and have a look and find out just how many trees there are out there that really shouldn't exist. They're impossible. And the answer to this one is definitely got to be a change of potting angle. Not sure, again, next week. And really, I suppose if I was going to give you any personal advice as to how you can start, one, start in the spring, already identify, I'm going to say to you 5 seedlings or probably 1 to 2 year old saplings that have got some roots on them. 3 years old, you get more roots, and get the rocks, wrap them up, make 5 projects, because I tell you what, when they're done 5 years later, you really do reap the rewards. And if you want to sell them, they go for a nice bit of money as well. Other thing you need to be looking for right now, you can do it all year round. Start looking for rocks whether it be the ones that have been created you find in the bonsai nurseries, which are these glued together bits of slate. To be fair, you could probably get loads of local slate, start gluing it together with some appropriate bonding agent, and I've done that exactly here with some common lava rock, which was in my fire grate. Used a two-piece epoxy to stick them together to create the bit that I want, so that the roots can grip over the top. Or indeed, you can do what I do also. Find your favourite location and quietly hunt around. Keep your eyes peeled for rocks that are either interesting or have crevices or something that's going to fit with your idea of a root over rock. You can do that all year round. And no, I'm not saying clear the beaches and come home with tons of rocks, but last time I went up to Orkney, I came back with 3. And I think over a big, large beach area and a big island, that's not too much to ask. So I got those, and I'm always on the lookout for rocks. And then start. Just remember your RTC. Roots, tree, composition. Get that right, and you are going to have a beautiful bonsai. And remember, the rock should support the story, not become the story. Does that make sense? Anyway, if you want to see more about root over rock and how some of these were created, that's a fantastic video to watch. Apart from that, happy bonsai and God bless. Cheers.